Welcome to Black Women Leading the Podcast. I'm Laura Nice, your host and the founder of BlackWomenLeading.com. Today, in this solo episode, I'm talking about setting boundaries with clarity and confidence. Listen, if you struggle with setting boundaries, if you get stuck on exactly what to say when you need to communicate a boundary, and if you're a leader who wants to model this behavior and create a team culture where healthy boundaries are respected, then you need to keep listening. Let's get into it. This podcast amplifies the needs and experiences of Black women leaders in the workplace with a holistic focus on three core areas: leadership development, mental wellness, and relationship management. Our ultimate aim is to help Black women learn, heal, and grow in their leadership capacity. Get ready, sis. The Black Women Leading Live Conference and Retreat is back for our 4th annual event. And this year, we're leveling up. In 2026, we're developing future-ready leaders. Leaders prepared to rise, adapt, and thrive in a world that's changing every single day. Designed by Black women for Black women, this is a one-of-a-kind professional development experience. You go deep into the heart work and the head work, the alignment, strategy, clarity, and confidence you need to boldly walk into your next level. This year, we're spotlighting the skills and mindsets that define future-ready leadership. Navigating disruption, leading through change, anticipating opportunity, and adapting with resilience and vision. Whether you're an emerging, mid-career, or senior leader, this space was created with you in mind. True to our cultural roots, we learn in community, across generations, across experiences, and across our shared brilliance. You'll be surrounded by Black women leaders, coaches, and experts, including direct learning from yours truly as the creator of the Black Women Leading programs and podcasts. If you are ready for transformation, if you are ready to expand your leadership and your wellness, if you're ready to prepare not only for what's now, but what's next, then you belong here. Join us at Black Women Leading Live, May 11th through the 14th in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. Save your seat at www.bwlretreat.com. Your future-ready leadership journey starts today. Welcome to Season 8, Episode 16, Setting Boundaries with Clarity and Confidence. Now, if you've been listening to the podcast for some time, you know no matter what the topic, on every episode, boundaries come up in some way. And so I wanted to do a focus episode on boundaries with some tactical skills. We haven't done an episode on boundaries since like season 3. So it's been maybe a few years. So I thought it was perfect to come back, talk about boundaries, but give a little bit of tactical skill around it. Now, while we were focused on boundaries at work, it applies in other areas of your life as well, okay? So use it wherever you need it. But it's something we know we need to do. We know we need to set boundaries, but sometimes we struggle with how we do it in a way that doesn't make us look like we aren't a team player at work. And let's just be honest, okay? Some Black women struggle because we've been socialized to be reliable, accommodating, high-performing, and grateful. And in many workplaces, that can turn into being overused. So this is also about a capacity issue, but it's also about a wellness and an energy issue as well. So first, let me say that being able to set and communicate boundaries is a leadership skill. It's not a personality trait. It's an important competency to master for everyone. And so this information is useful if you are a leader managing a team or individual contributor trying not to get swallowed up by the work culture, right? It applies to everyone. And the link to our season's theme of leaning into joy, you can't lean into joy in your life if everything is built around depletion, right? We've got to say no sometimes. We've got to say limits. So in this vein, it's important for us to prioritize developing and strengthening this skill. Workplaces reward overfunctioning in a lot of settings, okay? And Black women are often expected, just from the cultural narratives that we are used to hearing, being strong, being nice, being available, doing emotional labor for other people, right? And the cost of that, burnout, resentment, disengagement, health issues. I mean, go back a couple of episodes to the episode we did on reframing resilience, right? And this need for Black women to be super strong all the time is tearing us down. And so this boundaries exercise falls in that vein. So today I'm going to give you a practical boundary setting framework plus some scripts you can hopefully use immediately without the guilt, without burning bridges, but in a way that provides clarity and boosts your confidence while you're doing it. Also, we created a companion worksheet to go with this episode. Y'all know I love a good worksheet, okay? So check out the show notes and you can download that worksheet if this skill building is really helpful and resonant with where you are right now in your career. All right, so before I jump into the framework, let's just do a little reframe on what boundaries actually are. The key reframe I'm working with here is that boundaries are not walls, they're clarity. And sometimes, depending on, your background, your personality type, setting a boundary could feel like you're being mean or no, it's not about walls. It's not about creating a divide. It's about creating clarity. That's the reframe that I want you from a mindset perspective to enter into this episode. I also love the definition from Nidra Glover Tawwab in her book, Set Boundaries, Find Peace. She says boundaries are expectations and needs that help you feel safe and comfortable in your relationships. And when you think about that, expectations and needs that should be in place for you to give your best contribution, that's the type of clarity that we're talking about. Now, for the sake of our workplace focus in this episode, I want to focus on 3 categories of boundaries. So when I say focus on this, these are the things I want you to be thinking about and how you can use this framework I'm going to share with you today. Time boundaries. When am I available and when am I not available? Scope boundaries. What is my role and what is not my role? And emotional boundaries. What emotional responsibility am I carrying that isn't mine in the context of my workplace and my interaction with my colleagues at work? So based on these workplace categories, we can think of a boundary being simply the moment you tell the truth about your capacity, which is connected to those needs and those expectations. Okay? So boundaries are hard. I'm talking very, tactical right now, but boundaries are hard. And I want to just acknowledge this. I want to encourage us to give ourselves some self-compassion because you're going to learn some things you may want to go try tomorrow and you might bomb it. You may chicken out, right? It's okay, y'all. This is a ongoing practice that we're trying to develop and master. So if you try to go for it and you don't set the clarity, you don't set the boundary, try it again. Do it again. Have another conversation, right? It's okay. But let's just take a moment to acknowledge, again, setting boundaries can be hard, especially if you were raised to be capable, helpful, independent, not a problem, easygoing, stay in the background, all of those kind of things. Under the radar, hardworking, all of those things. When we add workplace realities for many Black women, this only adds to this challenge of these kind of cultural scripts we might be operating in already. As in your workplace, you may be experiencing bias, feeling like you must overperform. You all know the tropes. You got to work 3 times harder as a Black person or as a Black woman, right? We've heard these things. And in some places it feels true to us, right? If you're experiencing tone policing, and so fear of you being clear and assertive, being misconstrued as being difficult or angry, and just general stereotype traps, right? Lazy, angry, not a team player, when your behavior and your performance haven't demonstrated those things. So when we add all of this together, right? The cultural narratives, what might feel like an unsupportive workplace in those ways, the bias, the tone policing, boundaries is hard. It's hard. I'm just going to call that thing a thing, okay? When our frames are influenced by some of these experiences, we may confuse boundaries with being selfish, disloyal, giving too much risk to draw a line, right? And many Black women often don't set boundaries because we're afraid of the consequences, given all of those things I just referenced. So that fear is not irrational, it's learned. And we want to keep that in mind as we go through this framework. I want to encourage you to apply your intuition, apply your wisdom, apply the nuance that's necessary for you to take care of yourself. But I also want you to stretch to set the boundary if that is needed in a particular area. Okay. So before I jump into the practical steps, I just want to pause for a moment and go a little bit deeper on this. It may be hard. And I just want to name something that's really important and validate some people who might be listening here. Boundaries can often be hard because we didn't grow up practicing them, or we didn't grow up with a safe space to practice them. And I mean that literally. Some of us were raised in environments where we didn't have a lot of voice, where children were to be seen and not heard, where expressing feelings was considered talking back or being disrespectful, where having an opinion wasn't welcome or something that you even owned as a child. And if those were your experiences, then we were taught directly or indirectly that our needs were inconvenient or not important. And this is even in some of the most loving of families, right? Just what was the culture of being a child, where you came from, right? And for some people, it can even go a step deeper than that. Maybe you didn't have body autonomy as a child. I mean, the give your auntie a hug when you can't stand that auntie and you don't want to hug her, but you forced to do it. Those kind of things. We can joke about that kind of stuff, but it's really not allowing children to have autonomy over their body, right? And it teaches us sometimes to ignore our discomfort, to be polite in the face of our discomfort, to be agreeable, to not make things awkward. And those early experiences teach a powerful lesson. That lesson could be: my voice is not mine. My body is not mine. My choices are not mine. Or my time is not mine, right? So if you're an adult now and you're trying to set boundaries in a high stakes environment like the workplace, of course it feels hard if you're coming from that context, because what you're doing isn't just learning a skill, you're rewriting a story. I mean, let that set in if that's resonating with you. You are rewriting a story. And I just want to say this clearly, because, we're trauma informed around here. We do hard work and head work. If this conversation, even about boundaries, brings up anxiety, guilt, fear, even a physical stress response in your body, you're not being dramatic. You're not being weak. You're responding to what your nervous system learned a long time ago about safety, about belonging, about responsibility. So if this is hitting a tender place for you before we even step in fully into this conversation, I just want to encourage you to be gentle with yourself. Take them one step at a time. And if you need some deeper support, whether that's journaling, coaching, talking with your therapist, your spiritual counselor, whatever that is for you, please know that that's not a sign that something is wrong with you or that you're not a good leader. It's a sign that you're doing your work, your real healing work, because leadership requires that type of self-awareness, y'all, which sometimes triggers some healing that needs to occur. Okay. The good news, though, is that boundaries can be learned, even if you didn't have an opportunity to practice them in your upbringing. And they can be practiced, and you can start small with areas that don't feel that risky to you as you build up your muscle and your stamina in that area. Okay. So now let's get into the practical framework. 4 steps that can help you set boundaries with clarity, confidence, and care, without burning bridges again, without feeling like you're not a team player, etc., etc. Okay? So hopefully this 4-step method is helpful for you. And again, download the worksheet if it'll be helpful for you. But the 4 steps at a high level, and then I'll break them down, is 1, name the boundary. 2, anchor it in priorities. 3, offer a choice. And then 4, close the loop. All right, so let's go to the first step. Name the boundary. A boundary you can't name clearly is a boundary you can't hold, and a boundary you can't uphold. And so at Black Women Leading in our core programs, we do a lot of work with naming. Our participants name their values, they name their boundaries, they name, how stressors they're dealing with is showing up in their life and their health so that they can create an adequate self-care plan. They name the frustrations they're experiencing in their relational experiences at work so they can create a relationship management strategy. And oftentimes, if we don't have a name for something, we can't do something about it. We can't change it. We can't shift it. We can't advocate for it, right? What happens is that we may feel some boundaries violations and we feel it in our bodies, right? Whenever we talk to a person, maybe that violates our boundaries often, we get this feeling, we get so irritated whenever we have to talk with them or when we have to send an email about a particular thing. We find that it's taken us long time to send this email because we're rewriting it and we're overthinking it, right? So a lot of boundary violations that you experience, you'll feel them in your body a lot of times. You'll see it coming up and procrastinating to address something, right? Those are usually early signs that there is some boundary that needs to be set. Things like resentment. You did something, you agreed to something, but now you cussing them out in your head and feeling a way about it. Resentment, that's an indication that there was a boundary that needed to be set. Dread, just hating to get on the phone with the person, hating to go to work, hating to go to this particular meeting with this group, right? Dread, feeling taken for granted, right? And that loops into that resentment. Anxiety when you get those Slack pings or those Microsoft Teams pings, right? You just like, oh, what do they want now, right? That internal feeling of I just keep doing this and I don't know why. I'm not doing this again. I'm not going to agree to this again. Those kind of things. If you have some of that internal monologue or those feelings, those are signs that those are areas where you may need to set a boundary. Okay. So you feel those things, but we have to put a particular name to that and be able to communicate that boundary in a clear sentence. So all those feelings are under the surface again of those expectations and needs that are not being met. And so this very first step is about translating that discomfort into a clear sentence. So specific boundaries sound like what you will and won't do, when you're available or not available, what you can commit to, what is outside your scope. These are the type of sentences that you will want to put together in this first step of naming. So helpful phrases to hold on to here are things like, I'm not available for, fill in the blank. I can support X, but not Y. I can do this within these constraints, right? So very clearly naming the expectations and the needs. A few examples of those time, scope, or emotional boundary kind of categories we talked about. Time, I can't respond after 6 p.m. So please send me whatever information you want me to review before then. Scope, I can't take on another project this quarter. Or the emotional boundaries, I'm not available to facilitate emotional conflict between those two team members. Right? So very clearly name the boundary in a clear sentence. That's step one. Okay. Now, step two, we want to anchor that boundary in priorities. So this addresses those fears of not being a team player in the workplace because boundaries land better when they're connected to outcomes. This is what makes it feel leadership aligned and not just personal, something you're not going to do, right? This step is about shifting from a personal preference to professional clarity. When you anchor boundaries and priorities, it reduces the chance of things like being seen as selfish, being interpreted as emotional, triggering stereotypes about being difficult, right? Anchoring helps you feel less guilt too from your own perspective because you're not just saying no, you're protecting quality, timelines, and focus, whatever those priorities are. So this is especially powerful for leaders because it reinforces that boundaries are a part of good management and it allows you to model that. So think about anchors. I've been mentioning anchors. What are things you can anchor the boundary to priorities? Things like protecting quality, meeting deadlines, supporting the team's goals, staying aligned within the scope. ensuring sustainable performance, maintaining fairness and a workload balance. These are priority anchors that you can anchor that first statement in step 1 that you said. So some phrases to hang on to here are things like to protect delivery on X, fill in the blank, to maintain quality on Y, fill in the blank. Given our current priorities, fill in the blank, to ensure we meet the deadline, fill in the blank. So here are some examples. To stay aligned with our team's priorities, I'm blocking 2 hours each morning for deep work, and I will respond to email after that window. To support sustainable performance, I'm taking a true lunch break, and I will be back online at 1 p.m. To maintain quality and consistency, I'm not able to turn this around today. The earliest I can deliver this is Thursday. Or here's one more. To ensure high quality results, I'm not able to carry both the strategy and the implementation for this. We'll need additional support. So you said the statement, but then you back it up with the anchor to the priorities. And usually this is supportive because those priorities are known. That's not like something you're making up. That's something that's been usually stated before or referenced before on your team or with your manager. Okay, so we named it and then we connected it in step 2 to a priority. Now, step 3 is offering a choice, because you all might be listening to me like, Laura, I'm at work. I just can't be saying no to these people. It's my job. Yes, it's your job, but you can set limits and you can make the boundary land better when paired with options. So choices create collaboration without surrendering your boundary. So for example, after you clearly name the boundary in step 1 and you anchor it to a priority in step 2, you add here now in step 3 a choice element to make it collaborative. This step is where your boundary becomes easier to receive. It keeps the tone constructive. You're not just shutting things down, you're shaping what's possible and really driving the narrative around your capacity, but also your needs and expectations. It also reduces power struggles because you're inviting the other person into the decision making as well. So choices make it harder for someone to guilt you because you're still being solution oriented. And this is a key strategy for managing up too, especially if you're setting boundaries with a manager or a leader with more authority than you. So the best types of choices that you can kind of connect with the boundaries that you set are things like timeline choices. I can do it by Friday or next Tuesday. Scope choices. I can review it or I can lead it. Priority choices, A or B. I can do this or I can do that. Or I can do this first, given the timeline, and then I can go to this. What would you recommend as the starting point, given our tight timeline, right? Ownership choices, I can support or we can assign another owner. Or format choices, I can send an email summary or we can do a 15-minute meeting to sync, right? Just the other day, I had this happen to me in something that's going on at my church, in a ministry I'm involved in. I'm purposely trying to set some boundaries because I have too much going on in my schedule and I'm starting to see it impact my wellness, right? So someone reached out for a great initiative that they asked me if I can be a part of this team that's supporting this. And the person reached out and was like, what if I ask you to help me on this project? And we're talking via text. And I said, well, it depends on what type of help you need, right? And then she said, well, I have team, but you have experience in this and I'd really love to have your thoughts. And I said, oh, I can definitely be a thought partner in it. What does that look like? You know, popping onto the meeting and just sharing ideas and things. And she said, that's exactly what I would like. I can do that, right? What I can't do and what I was hoping she wasn't asking me for is really supporting the full rollout and implementation because I just don't have the capacity. But jump on a 30-minute call and share my thoughts on some ideas and my perspective. Yeah, I could definitely do that, right? So boundaries don't have to be confrontational, y'all. They can be collaborative. So here are some examples here. I can do this by Friday or I can start it next Tuesday. I can support this at a high level, but I can't own it. Or given the limited time frame, we can prioritize A or B, but not both, which would be your choice to start with. So you're adding in that choice to the boundary that you set and the priority that you anchored it to. Okay, we're going to put them all together once I finish all the 4 steps. Now let's go to the last step of the framework. Step 4, closing the loop. This is where many people fail, y'all. They say the boundary once and then they fold. Okay. They fold. They say they set the boundary and then they violate it, or someone is like just relentless and then they just they fold. They give in, right? So a boundary is not real until it's reinforced, y'all. So most people are good at setting boundaries, but not always good at maintaining them. So the moment a boundary gets tested, and it will get tested, is when your nervous system want to fold, the anxiety, the frustration, all of that kind of stuff. And you will have to reinforce it. Sometimes I encourage our Black women leading to use the broken record technique, which is really just restating the boundary without a ton of context, right? That is a strategy. But reinforcement is not aggression, y'all. It's consistency. So closing the loop protects you from backsliding on into the violation of the boundary. It protects you from miscommunication. It protects you from that slow creep of new expectations. And then you look up and it's a whole nother job role you have, right? And it also protects you from violating your own boundaries. Because for some of us, and I'm calling myself out. I'm very good at holding my boundaries with other people. Where I get messed up is violating my own boundaries. I say I'm going to log off at 6. Ain't nobody holding me to that but me. And I look up and it's 7 and I'm still dawdling on that computer, right? So closing that loop and really getting that confirmed helps you not to violate the boundaries. So I encourage you to put boundaries in writing when possible. That can be things like recap emails, a quick Slack note, or Microsoft Teams follow-up, depending on what tool you use, meeting notes if it's a formal meeting and you all are keeping notes. And then for leaders, especially when you're leading other people, when you close the loop, it's not just for yourself, but for your team. And it prevents that culture of overwork. It sets the tone of, here's what we agreed to, and here's how we do things here, right? So here's some phrases to hold on to here. Just confirming what we agreed on and then fill in the blank. I am kind of looping back to align on next steps. We talked about this, and this, and here's my understanding of next steps. As a reminder, I'm not available after 6 p.m. or whatever when you notice that people are trying to like pass out some action items that's going to linger beyond your work day, right? I want to restate that plan we landed on in our last discussion. So having that close the loop is an opportunity to reinforce the boundary. Remember, boundaries aren't a one-time announcement most times, you all. They're a practice. So they have to be revisited, recommunicated, and reset sometimes as the work shifts, as your time, capacity, needs, and expectations shift as well. So putting it all together, the 4 steps: name the boundary, anchor it in priorities, offer a choice, close the loop. So here's an example. Someone asks you to take on a new project, but you are already swamped, okay? So step 1, name the boundary. You may say, I can't take on another deliverable this month. I'm at capacity. Step 2, anchor it in priorities. I'm protecting delivery on our Q3 priorities and ensuring quality. Step 3, offer a choice. I can either support by reviewing it or we can revisit it next month. Step 4, close the loop. I'll follow up in writing with what we agreed on so we're all aligned on how we're moving forward, right? So you put all of those steps in, and that I can either support by reviewing, meaning I can't take it on, but whoever owns that, I can be a set of eyes to review and give feedback. Maybe I have capacity for that. I can't take it on to be the lead. That's what I was saying in the ministry activity that I referenced earlier, okay? So you don't just stop at the naming. Anchor it in that priority that's a shared priority, right? Give a choice to invite some collaboration, and then close the loop to confirm what we agreed upon and have a way forward to follow up if needed, if that boundary gets kind of, breached a little bit. Okay. Now, I want to give a couple of common boundary scripts just so you can have some in your back pocket if it's useful for you. Now, I want to be clear about one thing. These scripts are mostly the starting point. They're step one, which is naming the boundary. But depending on the situation, you may also need to add the step two, anchoring it to a priority, step three, the choice, step four, right? Closing the loop. So as you listen, think of these scripts like the first sentence, the foundation, if you will, the opening line, which is usually where people need the most help with. And then you can build the rest of the method around it. Okay. So for example, if you need to say no, but you have a tendency to over explain or to over kind of explain why you can't do it, you can just simply say, I won't be able to take that on right now, but I appreciate you thinking of me. Right? If it's about prioritization, right? I can absolutely support this. Which of my current priorities would you like me to deprioritize to make the appropriate space for this? Right? Because I can't do both, but I'm willing. You let me know what's the priority. The capacity script, right? I'm at capacity this week. I can revisit this next week, or we can identify someone else who has the bandwidth. The boundary and the alternative script, right? It's like built around a choice. I can't lead that, but I can review it and give feedback, right? That's like my thought partner example I gave. The after hour script. If you are constantly being asked to do things outside of, a set work time or on weekends, and that's not, appropriate for you to be working on the weekends, you could say, I'm offline this evening or this weekend, but I'll respond tomorrow, right? The emotional labor script. I want to call this out because sometimes I experienced this when I was a leader in a university because people had a lot of trust in me. I was often someone people came to for mentoring and advisory. Sometimes people would come with stuff that they needed to be contacting the EAP around, like the employee assistance program or their therapist or their friends or their family, right? So an emotional labor script, meaning you want to set some boundaries between this is getting a little bit too deep. You can say, I want to support you, but I also want to make sure we handle this in the right space. Let's schedule time to address it with the appropriate parties, which may be looping in HR if needed. Or instead of let's schedule time to address it, you could say, I really want to connect you to the employee assistance program because they will be able to give you more support on that. So you don't want to just kick people to the curb because they may be down. They might need some support. But you also want to have appropriate boundaries of how much into people's stuff you get into, right? The meeting boundary script. I don't have more to add beyond what I've shared. I'm going to step back so we can stay on time. Maybe if you find the meeting is going over the time because people are restating the same things over and over and over. That happens a lot. And although we are in this current anti-DEI moment in history, right? A common thing I've seen in working with Black women over the years is that they often get pulled into doing kind of DEI work, and they are not necessarily the DEI professional. They get pulled to being on the committees and all these kind of things. And so if that's the case for you, for example, a script could be, I care about this deeply. I'm not able to lead it right now, but I'm happy to recommend resources or suggest a few next steps for you who will take it on or for whoever will take it on. So again, just wanted to give some language because some people like to hear examples that they can take and make their own. I'm just giving you a high level script. Put your own sauce and communication and vibe to it, right? But we have to start somewhere. And this is that very first step of naming the boundary before we go into the other steps that I provided. Okay. Now, I do want to highlight a couple of common boundary mistakes that I see that I just want to encourage you to be mindful of. So mistake number one, asking for permission instead of stating the boundary, right? Is it okay if, right? No, state the boundary clearly. That's step one, naming it. Instead of asking for permission to state your boundary, you could say something very clear like, here's what I can do. Just go straight to it. Don't do the, is it okay if, would it be all right with you if I, no, don't ask the permission to set the boundary. Just set the boundary. Mistake number 2 is over apologizing. I'm so sorry I can't do it. So I set the boundary. I may have said it clearly, but then I weaken the potency of it by then apologizing a million times for the boundary that I just communicated. Over apologizing weakens the boundary and it invites negotiation for your boundary that is not negotiable. Okay. Mistake 3, leaving wiggle room. Well, I'll try to, people hear yes when you do that. State the boundary. Now, if you end up getting to it, fine. You could say, hey, I end up having some extra time and I worked on it, but you want to manage those expectations, especially if you know you can't do it, but you're trying to be nice, but instead of just clearly stating what the issue is, okay? Or clearly stating your boundary stance on it. Mistake 4 is not adjusting your behavior, y'all. And we said this earlier. Boundaries require aligned action. You can't set the boundary and then violate it and think people won't keep violating it, right? So if you say, I'm not going to be available after 6 p.m., but you still responding to the email. If you say, I'm not going to be available when I go on vacation using my PTO, but you still on the beach trying to respond to the email. No. You have to adjust your behavior for the boundary to stick and for it to be honored. You can't violate and expect other people not to violate it. Okay. And then mistake number 5 is not respecting other boundaries, y'all. This is a reciprocal thing. We can't set boundaries and expect people to respect ours when we are not respecting theirs. So a healthy culture requires mutual respect. If people aren't clear to, communicate their boundaries, but you're picking up that something is there either because they got attitude when you ask them about something, or there's some tension, or you notice their body language gets to wriggling and all of that, or they go to the, well, yeah, maybe I could. Then you can clearly ask, are you able to do this? Do you have capacity? You might be helping them to set a boundary because they may not have the language either. You can tell them to listen to this podcast though. But we need to respect others' boundaries, okay? That's critical, y'all. This got to be a reciprocal thing. Now, if you're a leader, I just want to speak to my leaders who manage other people, because everybody is a leader, right? Because if nothing else, you're leading yourself. But if you're a leader who manages other people, you lead a team. I just want to highlight this because you modeling these boundaries and really supporting and affirming your team and being able to communicate clear boundaries really creates a healthy team culture. A leader's job isn't just to get results, it's to protect the conditions under which results can be sustained, okay? So leaders can model boundaries by, 1, if you all have some set parameters around respecting people's time off, don't email people at midnight. If you like to work at midnight, that's fine. Schedule the emails, though, to go out during the workday. And I do that. I'm a really early morning person. Sometimes I'm working with clients that are in other countries. So I might do, just because we couldn't coordinate in our overlap time, I might do a 6 a.m. call or something like that. And then my team may have follow up based on that call with the lead at the client that's, across the world or something, right? I might want to craft that email so I don't forget and so it's fresh, but I'm going to schedule it to go out at an appropriate time because I want to model the boundaries and people follow what you do, not what you say. Okay. You can model boundaries by not consistently rewarding overwork. People notice that. They see that is what the expectation is of achievement or success or a plus player, right? And then also don't punish honesty about capacity, right? If people are saying, I'm swamped, and you know that they have good time management and they really are swamped, let's not punish their honesty. Let's help them think about what do we need to deprioritize? Is there a way we can spread this amongst other team members? Is there some organization I could support you with, right? Also, leaders create norms. So think about what norms might be appropriate for your team. And you can have some dialogue with the team to co-create these. So I see some, for example, some leaders we work with, they'll have meeting free blocks. We have a couple of organizations we work with where they'll do meeting free Fridays. So people have that as a catch-all day to catch up from the week. Now, if it's something particularly urgent, it's an outlier if they have to violate that, but they communicate it appropriately and people can respect it because they know, oh, this is a big thing and this doesn't happen all the time, right? I see other people that do not schedule meetings back to back. So they'll do like a 9:05 to 9:50. So people have time to get there from the previous meeting and then time to kind of get themselves together before they go into the next one. I actually had a client send me a calendar invite for a meeting that was like that the other day. Leaders create norms and ways around realistic workload planning, right? Let's really look at what we're asking people to do. Leaders create norms around clear turnaround times, right? If I'm looking at the scope of this project and I know at minimum it's going to take you about a week, I'm not going to ask you to get that back to me in 2 days because that means I'm expecting you to go home and work late at night and on the weekend, right? So leaders create norms. Leaders also protect the team and provide air cover. So push back on unrealistic expectations that are being pressed down upon your team. You may not win, but push back. Let your team see that, hey, let me bag my team up. Leaders protect the team by clarifying priorities. So if larger strategic initiatives are passed down for your team and you see they're doing a million things already, go back and ask whoever the leader was that pushed it down to you, hey, my team is doing this, this, and this is what we've identified as the priorities. What is your picture of that, and what should we be shifting around so that we have the capacity to complete this stuff with excellence? And leaders protect the team by stopping scope creep, especially if you're working with external partners, clients, and you see it's just one more thing added on. Some things you may take on for goodwill to build that relationship and rapport, but some things you're going to have to push back on in support of your team. Okay, so leaders play a big role with modeling boundaries, creating norms, and protecting the team that really supports a healthy culture for not only you to be able to set boundaries and sustain them, but for your team to be able to do that as well. So as I'm coming to close this, you all, I want to tie this back to our leaning into joy season theme, right? Joy requires margin. It requires some time to be intentional. It requires energy. It requires boundaries, y'all. Boundaries, again, as I said earlier, it's about your time. It's about your capacity, but it's also about your energy, right? And are you depleted? Do you have space, the mental space, the, emotional space, the whatever that is, so that you can really show up and give your best contribution? So setting boundaries is really aligned with our ability to lean into joy. Okay, I hope this was helpful for you. Don't forget to download the companion worksheet from the show notes if this is helpful for you and you want to have a little bit more tips and tools to support you. Now, if you're listening and you've been feeling depleted, I want to remind you, boundaries are not a rejection of others. They're a commitment to yourself. And when you start to set them with clarity and consistency, you're not burning bridges. You're not being the poor team player. You're building a healthier, more holistic path forward. So this week, I challenge you to choose one boundary you've been avoiding and practice saying it once without apology. Use the 4-step method to help you. And if you do it, email me or DM me on LinkedIn or Instagram and let me know how it goes. I am cheering you on. All right, so if this was helpful, y'all, share this with your network, with your friends, with your family, so we can amplify this work that we're doing. We are available on all major podcast platforms and on YouTube. You can also listen from our website. Now, if you are listening now on YouTube, make sure you hit that subscribe button, y'all, so that you can get the updates when we have a new episode and new stuff coming out, okay? So you can subscribe, connect with us on YouTube, connect with us on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn. We are at Black Woman Leading on all socials. Woman is singular. You can visit our website at blackwomanleading.com if you're interested in learning about our programs and events. And if you want to connect with me personally, I'm at Laura E. Knights, most active on Instagram and LinkedIn. And finally, if you want to learn more about our work we do at Knights Consulting inside of organizations to help them create more effective leaders and high-performing teams, check out our corporate site at knightsconsultinggroup.com. We would love to connect with you in any of these ways. And until next time, be well.